This is the town of Seahouses in Northumberland, a town that actually attracts many visitors to the Northumberland National Park. It's a photography trip, and Paul and his brother David are once again my travel companions. This time to film the wildlife of the renowned Farne Islands, where the bird life is perhaps the best Britain has to offer. We booked a B&B and then headed down to the quayside to get tickets for the boat trip to this National Trust bird sanctuary. That done, we get our first glimpses of this quaint town, the beautiful harbour, and the sea houses on the hill. The tides here can vary as much as 15 feet, hence the high sea wall. The cameras are never very far away, and the attraction is our first view of the Farne Islands in the distance. Though a little sad that this sunny day was the ideal day to visit, but alas, it's 4 in the afternoon, and we just missed the last boat. There it goes. Over the wall, a black-headed gull looks for food. Now the tide is out, and there's rich pickings. The fishing boats fewer now, and the lobster pots on the quay giving a clue to their intended victims. Crabs and lobsters. We settled for some fish and chips. This is also a historic place. Up the road is Lindisfarne, and up the beach, Bamburgh Castle. Bamburgh Castle has been the location of a castle from the time of the early Britons and was a very important place in the 5th and 6th centuries. The original fortification was destroyed by the Vikings in 993. The foundations of this castle are from a castle built by the Normans in the 11th century and later developed by the English monarchy. Henry II probably built the keep. Thereafter the castle deteriorated, but it was restored during the 18th and 19th centuries. It was finally bought by the Victorian industrialist William Armstrong, who completed the restoration. Many times it's featured in films, notably Ivanhoe, El Cid, Elizabeth, and recently Macbeth. Now it's a favorite venue for weddings and wedding photos. Here comes the bride. We were impressed by the coastline here, a great place to walk. Then we headed off to the Bluebell Inn, where we had booked rooms for the night. Now tomorrow is going to be special. Next morning we were greeted not by the sunshine, but by weather that is probably more appropriate for the trip. It wouldn't be the same if it wasn't cold and raining. There's nevertheless excitement in the air. On the hill is the oldest ship in Seahouses, the old ship.
Well, cold, overcast, drizzly day.
The boat is full of enthusiasts. The tourists stayed home today. Everyone has either a camera or a pair of binoculars. And though it is drizzling with rain and cold, the anticipation acts as both umbrella and heater. The Farne Islands have great spiritual importance, especially for the birds. St. Cuthbert passed a law in 676 protecting the eider ducks and other seabirds nesting on the islands. These are thought to be the earliest bird protection laws anywhere in the world. Considering there are 100,000 guillemots and 72,000 puffins here, as well as other bird species, his law seems to be working. In fact, a total of 290 bird species have been recorded here. The main attraction being the excellent nesting places, absence of predators other than bigger birds, and a good supply of food. On our way out, we encountered some of the estimated 6,000 seals here. Now, when I'm in Norway, I harp on about the raw nature, and this is probably the nearest we come to it in England. But it's time to set foot on terra firma and explore. And the first thing I see is one of St. Cuthbert's eider ducks. No doubt ecstatic about the invention of man-made fibers that now fill our pillows. Having said that, it reminded me of the eider down I had as a child. For some reason we now call them duvets. Duvet being the French word for down, as in eider down. Hence, Australians don't have duvets down under, they have them down over. This is a shag, smaller than a cormorant, greenish in colour, with a small crest on its head. It likes to return to the same nesting site and is quite abundant here. Feeding in the daytime, one of the adults stays with the chicks at all times, while the other will dive to the seabed for sand eels. To get down to the sand eels, shags have been known to dive down to 150 feet. The nests tend to be very haphazard, with seaweed and twigs cemented together by the bird's own guano. We are there in June, and the chicks are hatched. Usually 3 eggs are laid, and the chicks, when hatched, are without down and have to rely on their parents for warmth. Another reason why one adult always stays at the nest. The guillemots are the most abundant birds here. They nest close to one another and do not actually have a nest, laying their eggs on the hard rock. 1 egg per adult, that is. After the chicks are born, the adults fish and feed them. The original Hard Rock Cafe. perhaps. One might think that eggs on hard rocks and steep hills is a recipe for scrambled eggs. But God, in his wisdom, knowing their predilection, made the eggs conical, so they roll in circles. Believers in evolution explain that all the round eggs rolled off the cliff millennia ago, and only the conical ones survived. Though one would imagine if that were the case, there would be round egg, crevice-only laying guillemots still around, if that is the right word. Without doubt, a comical scenario. The guillemot is called William, by the way. Don't ask me why. It's French. From their behavior, it appears that William is not too smart. And this condition is testified to by the fact that at 3 weeks of age, the young guillemot leaves the colony before it has fledged and recklessly plunges into the sea, frantically followed by the adult male, who will care for the fledgling at sea until it can fend for itself a couple of months later. Another interesting fact is that when they dive to obtain food, they fly under the water using their wings to get to the sand eels. Who said bird watching was boring? That brings me to the famous puffin, everybody's favorite, including the black-backed gull, whose interest is strictly gastronomical. They feed on puffins. But the puffins feed on sand eels, which they retrieve from the seabed. Their Latin name literally means little brother. The baby puffins are called pufflings. Because of their appearance, they're also known as the clowns of the ocean and sometimes sea parrots. Just like their relatives, the guillemots, they use their wings for swimming with a flying movement underwater. In the air, they beat their small wings super fast, up to 400 times a minute. That makes for swift flight, at times flying low over the surface of the water to avoid becoming the black-backed gull's lunch. They don't regurgitate the fish for their chicks, but rather are able to hold several eels in their beaks. On filming them, I did notice that puffins who had caught multi-fish tended to parade their catch with great pride, not unlike footballers after they've just scored a goal. As we visited another of the Farne Islands, I noticed a large number of burrows that had been dug by the puffins in which to nest, giving shelter from the weather and also a refuge from the black-backed gulls or other birds simply trying to steal their sand eels as they return to the nest. Amazing place. There's so many birds. The guillemots, the cormorants, the seagulls, the puffins. It's just in such great numbers. It is really amazing. The sounds that they're making too. Very noisy. Everybody up here has a lens about 3 foot long. There are a good number of gulls here, and one had to be careful not to step on their eggs, often left unattended. Many of them build their nests in the rocks, and this time of the year enabled us to see the chicks in the nests. This is clearly the gull neighborhood. We then boarded the boat to go to another island. This one the particular domain of the Arctic tern. They tended to use the paths to lay their eggs. The downside of this for the visitor was at this time of the year they aggressively guard their nests and protect their young. Their methods are well known and instill fear into every visitor. The first is dive bombing, when they will deposit guano on people's heads. The other is even more aggressive. They will attack the tops of people's heads, flying in and pecking, often drawing blood. The wildlife warden will simply advise, wear a hat. The wisdom of that advice can be seen on the top of his hat. So with this scene, the inspiration for Hitchcock's film The Birds, I rest my case. I hope you enjoyed the adventure. The holy island of Lindisfarne, off the northeast coast of England, also known as Holy Island. It has a recorded history from the 6th century and was an important centre of Celtic Christianity, especially under Saints Aidan and Cuthbert. After Viking invasions and the Norman conquest, a priory was re-established. Later, a small castle was built to protect the island. It is an island, but at low tide it can be reached by a causeway. Warning signs urge visitors to check tide times carefully and include a graphic illustration of what can happen. The island of Lindisfarne appears under the Old Welsh name Medcot in the 9th century Historia Brittonum, and experts have proposed that the name derives from Latin Medicata Insula, or Healing Island. Some say because the island has some medicinal herbs, but it's far more likely due to the miracles of the saints. The name Lindisfarne has an uncertain origin. The first part, Lindis, Celtic, meaning stream or pool, as there is a small lake on the island. The second element may come from Farne, meaning land. This appears to be the origin, the Isle of Arran in Scotland being derived from the same word. There's a tradition in the northeast of England of fishermen using redundant herring boats as storing sheds for their nets and equipment. Holy Island is one of the few places where they remain in abundance. The upturned boats are covered in tar for waterproofing and certainly have character. The castle is now run by the National Trust. This area was once a very volatile border area between England and Scotland, and also frequently attacked by Vikings. The castle was built in 1550. Around that time, the Priory went out of use, and stones from the Priory were used to build it. It's very small and sits on the highest point of the island, a hill called Beblo. The island measures 3 miles by 1.5 miles and is about 1,000 acres and a mile from the mainland. The island, as of 2011, had a population of 180. The village is a pretty village, with restaurants, coffee house, a couple of pubs, and is a quiet haven, especially when the tide comes in. Lindisfarne is well known for mead, an alcoholic beverage made with fermented honey, which some say is the ancestor of all fermented drinks. The parish church of St. Mary the Virgin, the Priory, and the monastery are closely situated. When the Normans rebuilt the Abbey, the site was moved, and the original site of the Priory church was redeveloped in stone as the parish church, making it the oldest building on the island that still has a roof. The monastery of Lindisfarne was founded in 634 by an Irish monk, St. Aidan, who had been sent from Iona off the west coast of Scotland at the request of King Oswald, and he remained here until his death in 651. St. Cuthbert, patron saint of Northumberland, was a monk and later abbot of the monastery, and his miracles and life are well documented. He later became Bishop of Lindisfarne, and an anonymous life of Cuthbert, written in Lindisfarne, is actually the oldest extant piece of English historical writing, written between 685 and 704. The site of the church is the oldest site on the island. Inside, a wooden sculpture called The Journey by Fenwick Lawson represents the removal of the body of St. Cuthbert. When Vikings were coming to attack Lindisfarne a second time, monks carried his body to safety, and eventually, after many years, he was buried in Durham Cathedral. Parts of the Saxon church still exist as the chancel wall and arch. After the Reformation, the church slipped into disrepair but was restored in 1860. Today, it's a beautiful place of worship. It's built of coloured sandstone. The North Aisle is known as the Fisherman's Aisle and houses the altar of St. Peter, the beautiful stained glass windows, depicting biblical scenes. One impressive feature of the island is its preservation. Obviously, great care has been taken to maintain the authenticity of this historic and revered location. Surely one is surrounded by history, but also peace pervades the island. One might even say it's holy. One can imagine the pilgrims coming to these shores 1,000 years ago, leaving footprints in the sand that would be gone by the time they returned, washed away by the waves of time that still caress these shores. And still the pilgrims come. This is Berwick upon Tweed, the last place in England before Scotland. We'd been in the Farne Islands and then Lindisfarne, and we are heading towards Scotland, and decided to have a coffee in this delightful little town just before the border. It does have a fascinating history. This is the River Tweed, in parts forming the border. Berwick was greatly involved in the wars between England and Scotland. This bridge, known as the Old Bridge, is a stone bridge built between 1611 and 1624. It's 1,160 feet long and has 15 arches. It's not the only bridge. The Royal Tweed Bridge was built in the 1920s. The third bridge, a railway bridge named the Royal Border Bridge, has 28 arches and certainly impressive. The trains passing 120 feet above the river. It was an interesting place to visit. The town itself had character, and we not only enjoyed a great cup of coffee, but also a look around the town. But we were heading to Loch Lomond. Before long we were sitting on the bonny banks of Loch Lomond, and before you ask, we took the high road. The low road is for dead men. For me, these views bring back memories. Not that I'm from here, but Scotland was the first country outside of England that I visited as a teenager. I still remember the TROSSACHS badge I bought here and sewed it on my hiking anorak. When you've not travelled much, the views are wow, and the memory certainly lingers. The seaplanes remind me that Loch Lomond is the largest lake by surface area in Great Britain. A freshwater lake 24 miles long and 5 miles wide at its widest point. David and Paul enjoyed the shooting. We finally found a bed and breakfast, and next morning found out that it had the best breakfast in Scotland. Porridge or cereal to start, fruit juice and tomato, bacon, tatty scone, sausage, eggs any way you like, haggis, and black pudding, which is pig's blood and raw fat in a pig's intestine, and toast and marmalade to finish. The place overlooked the loch, and we all had 4-poster beds in our rooms. It was number one hospitality, nothing spared, and not greatly expensive. I'd love to go back, but I've lost the address. Stopped off briefly at Loch Lomond, but the weather was dull. And then on to Inveraray. Still cloudy, shooting the legendary Scottish countryside along the way. Even in cloudy weather, impressive. Finally reaching Inveraray. Loch Fyne in the sunshine is beautiful. In the cloud it's mystical. Today is mystical. The Inveraray Maritime Museum is on the Arctic Penguin, a 3-masted iron-built schooner launched in 1911 and now moored permanently at Inveraray Pier. This is the mouth of the River Fyne, and in case you're wondering, this is the sea. Many Scottish lochs, like the Norwegian fjords, go deep inland. Next to the museum is the Puffer, the vital spark, well known in these parts, being the venue of a TV series in times past. We wanted to drive through the Highlands and set out from Inveraray to drive up through Glencoe and experience the heart of Scotland, its castles and mountains. Though the weather was not great, it was nevertheless a great ride, here passing Loch Awe. We then encountered a very nice mobile snack bar and decided on a cup of tea. It had an amazing photo of a stag on the side of it, and the owner, Errol, told us a strange story about it. It often came up to the van and was quite tame.
A wild animal that becomes so friendly. He lost his fear of humans, and rather than go back to the herd, he seemed to prefer to want to be with humans because he was in here all the time. Beautiful.
Late one evening, apparently 2 youths enticed it and for no reason shot it through the eye, killing it, and then they drove off. Errol was clearly attached to this majestic creature. Its memory lives on here. We then continued our journey toward Glencoe through the Highlands, often stopping for photos. This is the middle of summer, so one can imagine it's a pretty bleak place in the winter, often impassable. This is Glencoe and Photo Time. It's magnificent rugged countryside, and there's snow up here, even in the summer. We are making our way to Oban, where we'll stay the night. And there's plenty of interesting scenes on the way. The road here skirting the Loch. We decided to have a look at Castle Stalker, featured in the Monty Python movie, The Holy Grail. It's situated on an island that actually can be reached with some difficulty on a low tide. We soon reached Connell, just short of Oban, and found a B&B with a great view over the loch and opportunities for bird watching. After unloading, we drove into Oban. It was only 6:30, and we wanted to have a look around and eat dinner. The legendary Calumet departing for the Isle of Mull. Our plan is to go there tomorrow. So we checked out the restaurants here, mainly seafood. This is the boat we'll catch tomorrow, sailing into Oban in the evening sun. For people living in the west of Scotland, these ferries are very important. For us tourists, they give us a chance to see Scotland. So back to the Mactalla guest house to enjoy the evening and film the chaffinches. I believe this is a greenfinch and this is a siskin. Similar in colour but with black wingtips. As the sun sets, we reflect upon a great day in Scotland, but we're certainly looking forward to visiting the Isle of Mull, Staffa and FINGAL'S Cave, and the beautiful island of Iona. Early next morning we were off to Oban to catch the Isle of Mull ferry, anticipating a great day, as we were to get the opportunity of filming wildlife, and especially puffins in the wild. We happy band of brothers. The day not exactly what we'd hoped for, but clear, though a little chilly. Oban is a beautiful town. The vehicles were soon coming on board. And we were casting off. And soon underway, another adventure. Time to check the cameras, have a drink, and then enjoy the views. We passed Bamburgh Castle, former home of the MacLean clan that was used in the movie Entrapment with Sean Connery, who actually has MacLean ancestry. We are to take the ferry to Craignewer, and then a bus across the island to Finnefort, where we can get the ferry to Staffa. The journey takes an hour and 20 minutes. The highlight of the trip is the commentary of the bus driver, who kept us both informed and amused as we enjoyed the unspoilt scenery on the island of Mull.
Oh, it is not like this all the way. It gets worse. Down to the village of Finnefort.
We even saw wildlife along the way. At Finnefort we boarded a small boat to take us to Staffa and the famous FINGAL'S cave. We'd been warned about the possibility of seeing wildlife on the way out, and we were not to be disappointed, encountering a basking shark that was clearly basking. After that, the cave came into view, formed by ancient hexagonal basalt columns, creating an enchanting freak of nature, as though put there by aliens 10,000 years ago. Mendelssohn wrote an overture about it, and Keats called it the Cathedral of the Sea, but it was actually named after a fictional character written about by Scottish poet James Macpherson, now a favourite tourist destination, not only for the cave, but the wildlife too. We climbed the steep rocks to get the views from the top. Beautiful scenery, rugged raw nature, the wild sea, the amazing rock formation. The cormorants and shags, the wild flowers, bluebells, and the clowns of the sea, the puffins. We'd already filmed them on this trip on the Farne Islands, when more often than not they would pose with a mouthful of sand eels. It appears that they'd just fed their young and were taking a break, ever vigilant, but as though they were enjoying the scenery. But here I have to confess that I was taken aback by their tameness. They are very attractive with their bright beaks and sad eyes. This one actually walked up to me as though showing off his bravado. In flight, they beat their wings at up to 400 beats a minute. Here they look quite small, but they actually grow to 13 inches and have a wingspan of 21 inches. Both in Iceland and the Faroe Islands, they're still eaten. I thoroughly enjoyed my time sitting among them and capturing some interesting moments. In fact, I had to run back to the boat to avoid missing it. From Staffa, the boat took us to Iona, and as we left, the sun came out. Iona will look great in the sunshine. Another great time of exploring is here. We are arriving at Iona, in the inner Hebrides of bonny Scotland, and the home of the famous Iona Abbey, that was the centre of Gaelic monasticism for 4 centuries, and is now renowned for its peaceful atmosphere and scenic beauty. And it's a beautiful day at 3:24 in the afternoon on the 9th of June 2010, and we've just arrived from Staffa on the Ullin of Staffa ferry boat, and it's good to be alive. If there's a prettier little harbour in Britain, let me know, quick. It's pollution-free, litter-free, and the local people are delightful most of the time. I am myself delighted because my earnest prayers have been answered and the sun has appeared, and I have in my hand a Sony EX1 camera that in its day was the best. As you can see, it captures the moment wonderfully. So welcome to Iona. The adventure starts here. As we arrive, others depart. This is to be a short adventure that actually starts with a late lunch. David is getting the food while we get the cameras ready. The seagull is hoping for a crumb. The Callimac has already reached Finnefort on Mull, about a mile away. The place is so clean, it has spawned an urban legend that someone once dropped a £5 note, and before he could pick it up, he was fined for littering. So we set out to walk to the Abbey, just a few hundred yards away. The island is 3.4 square miles and has a population of around 125. Its name may have come from a number of languages, all containing the word island. In the Danish language it's translated the Island of Refuge, which sounds about right. First stop, the ruins of Iona Nunnery, established in the 13th century. Then up to the Abbey, tripod in hand. It is one of the oldest and most important religious centres in Western Europe, and played a great part in the spread of Christianity throughout Scotland. It's now home to the Iona community, an ecumenical Christian order that is a popular place of Christian pilgrimage. Its religious history dates back to 563. Columba came to Iona from Ireland with 12 companions and founded a monastery. St. Martin's Cross, dated to the 8th century, still stands outside the modern abbey. This was built in 1938 and is a beautiful building, immaculately kept. Outside, the views are stunning. The scenery of Scotland is special. It's not Norway or Switzerland, but it has its own charm. A replica of St. John's Cross is located in the Infirmary Museum at the rear of the Abbey. The decorated cloisters totally surround the inner garden. That was being used for an art exhibition and demonstration when we were there. It was a place of beauty and serenity, and we really enjoyed our time there. But our time was up. We've only been here for 2 hours, and I wished it was longer. At 5:45 we are getting our last shots of this fascinating island. Then back to Finnefort, and our amazing bus driver continues his commentary and shows us more wildlife. We are soon back in Craignure, and this is where we came in early this morning. It's certainly been a great day. Last moments sharing shots, and here comes the Isle of Mull ferry to take us back to Oban. What a beautiful day it has been, and for 3 photographers, we will relive it all many times over. The next day was to be a journey through some of Scotland's most beautiful scenery. Starting out in Oban, we planned to go south to Lochgilphead. Then along the shores of Loch Fyne to revisit Inveraray in the sunshine this time. Then the delightful journey from Inveraray to Loch Lomond, and finally around the coast to Lochs. The Mactala B&B in Connell had been excellent. Views of the birds and the loch, and the sun was shining as we prepared for a great trip. It's about 40 miles to Lochgilphead and a further 25 miles to Inveraray, then 10 miles to Loch Lomond. So we had a leisurely drive ahead with some remarkable scenery. First stop, the picturesque town of Lochgilphead, where we can stretch our legs, get some shots, and have a coffee right on the shores of Loch Fyne. A quaint little town, like many Scottish towns, very well kept, and a pleasure to take a break here. From there we drove up the shore of Loch Fyne to Inveraray. The road we are travelling is a remarkable road, difficult to capture on video, but a pleasure to drive on a good day. Scottish weather is certainly a mystery. It can be pouring with rain in one valley, and the next valley has beautiful sunshine. Whatever the weather forecasts, it will be right somewhere and wrong somewhere. Finally arriving again in Inveraray, a great town to visit, plenty of things to do, to see and to eat. And these shots of the loch make it easily recognizable to anyone who's travelled this way. The museum is well worth a visit, and puts the place in historical perspective, and has a coffee shop on board. The views of the loch and the town very picturesque. The green on the harbour is a delightful place, and a favourite place for a sit and watch the world go by moment. On a day like today, especially enjoyable. and you can buy a first-class sweater here, wool or cashmere. The Bronze War Memorial remembers those who gave their lives for the freedom of their compatriots. A kilted Highland soldier in tam o' shanter, standing at ease, but still admired and not forgotten. But it's time to go on to Loch Lomond, a great road to travel and a scenic place at the end of it. Unfortunately, no time for a cruise this time. We have to be in logs. We already had booked a B&B here, and this is our celebrated host.
You know, when we were in Logs, we stayed with a famous painter. His name was William.
He told me his brother Michael did ceilings. So into town, all parking is £2, and for me, this is another memorable visit. I was here in 1965 when I actually took this ferry to Great Cumbrae, hired a bike, and cycled all the way around the island. Now that's a great thing to do if you visit Logs. Though the best trip through the Kyles is no more. I filmed that years ago. I must find it. Great trip. So here's a man and his best friend feeding the gulls from the attic window. Logs is a great base from which to see this part of the world. But alas, our time is up, and tomorrow we leave. What a trip.